The first time I saw the city burn, it wasn't on the news. It was in my mind. A vision of fire crawling across the skyline of everything I'd built, dreams, plans, illusions. I didn't need gasoline to light it. Just betrayal. Just one man's smile pretending to mean congratulations. His name was Andrew, my boss, my mentor, the man who said he saw something special in me. Turns out what he saw was a resource, cheap, disposable, and easy to take credit for. It happened on a Tuesday that smelled like printer ink and burnt coffee. The boardroom felt colder than usual, maybe because the AC was fighting the heat of ambition. I sat there watching Andrew click through my presentation, my data, my strategy, my late nights. He didn't even flinch. He called it our work. The room applauded. I smiled like a good employee should. That's the day I learned that success, when stolen, feels colder than failure. I walked out of that meeting shaking, not from anger, but from the quiet disbelief that the world could look at a thief and call him visionary. After that, I changed, not overnight, but in pieces. First came the silence, then came the study, then came the plan. You don't fight men like Andrew head on. You let them think they've won. You let them believe their empire is built on your submission. And then when the time is right, you take the ground from under them inch by inch. The funny thing about working under people who underestimate you, they give you full access to their empire, the passwords, the meetings, the blind spots. Every empire has them. I started documenting everything, every lie, every expense, every manipulation he wrapped in polite language. I became a ghost inside his system, smiling during team lunches, laughing at his jokes, nodding in meetings like a loyal soldier. But loyalty had died the day he stole my name off that slide deck. I spent nights in my apartment surrounded by files, screenshots, whispers of evidence. The glow of my laptop painted my face like a crime scene. Not of his crime, of mine. Because I wasn't building a case. I was building a trap. The first step wasn't destruction, it was invisibility. I withdrew, stopped volunteering, stopped speaking up, became background noise, the kind of employee people stop noticing. And that's when they talk the most. People trust silence. It makes them honest. I heard everything. The private jokes, the backroom deals, the kind of rot that lives in power when no one's watching. Every detail I wrote down, not because I needed proof, but because I wanted precision. Revenge isn't rage, it's surgery. Then came the accident. Not mine, his. Andrew made a deal that went wrong. A client turned hostile. The numbers didn't add up, and for the first time, his voice trembled in a meeting. The board started asking questions, small ones but sharp. He needed help. He needed me, and I gave it to him. I stayed late, fixed the numbers, smoothed the reports, watched him sleep well again, because I wasn't done yet. The best revenge isn't taking someone down. It's letting them climb high enough to feel the fall. Months passed. The city lights blurred into the same tired pattern, coffee, deadlines, and fake smiles. But under it all, a heartbeat pulsed. Steady, calculating, alive. One night, after another meaningless win at work, I went home and stared at myself in the mirror. The eyes looking back weren't angry anymore. They were patient, cold, ready. I whispered it out loud just to hear it in the air. This is where it begins. And it did. I started rewriting reports, just a few numbers, nothing obvious. Small, subtle shifts that made future audits impossible to trace. Then I started forwarding internal memos anonymously, one to HR, one to legal, one to the very client Andrew had betrayed months ago. Every week, another domino. The machine began to stutter. Meetings grew tense. Rumors spread. People whispered in hallways that Andrew might be losing his touch. I sat there quiet, taking notes, watching my plan unfold with terrifying ease. But something unexpected happened. In the middle of all that chaos, I began to feel lighter. Not happy, not free, just lighter, like carrying revenge had been its own kind of poison, and now that it was finally working, the venom was leaving my system. Still, I couldn't stop. Not yet. The night the final report leaked, I didn't even have to press send. Someone else did, maybe an assistant, maybe a rival. I'll never know. But the storm broke, and Andrew's empire began to burn. News traveled fast. By morning, he was trending. By noon, he was suspended. By evening, he was gone. And me? I was still sitting at my desk, typing, calm. No one suspected me. No one looked twice. I had been invisible too long. That night, I walked out of the office into the cold wind. The city lights looked different. Brighter, maybe, or maybe I was just seeing clearly for the first time. Ambition had built my prison, but revenge had set the fire. And as I walked away, I realized something. It wasn't about Andrew anymore. It never really was. It was about me. What I'd become, what I'd burned to become free. I thought revenge would feel like justice. It didn't. It felt like ashes. But ashes are what you rise from. The morning after Andrew fell, the office smelled like fear wearing cologne. Everyone spoke in half sentences. Everyone smiled too much. I watched faces like I was reading a weather report, tracking which way the storm would move next. Nobody looked at me twice. That was my gift now. An invisibility earned, not given. His corner office sat dark behind glass. The door was sealed with a neat strip of paper and a lock that felt ceremonial, like a ribbon across a coffin. People walked past slower than usual, eyes drifting, pretending not to stare. I stared openly. Let them think I was curious. I was. Graves teach more than trophies. At my desk, my screen glowed with the soft ache of unanswered emails, internal statements, legal notices. HR's language had the texture of sand, dry, abrasive, meant to bury. Andrew's name appeared like a ghost summoning itself. Temporary leave. Investigation. No comment. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt cold, like I'd stepped outside without a coat and the air had sharp teeth. Around noon, Sarah from finance leaned over my divider. She had the careful smile of a person offering condolences to someone who hasn't admitted their loss. "Crazy week," she said. "Yeah. You were close to him, right? Close enough to see how far he fell." She laughed, not because it was funny, but because people laugh when they need permission to move forward. "You think he's done?" "I think he started dying a long time ago." She nodded like I'd said something wise, then walked away. I watched her shoulders stay up around her ears all the way to the copier. Everyone's did. No one wanted to be the next headline. No one wanted to be seen standing near the wrong corpse. By 3, the rumors had shape. Embezzlement, misreporting, breach of contract. My name floated next to none of it, and still my hands were unsteady as I typed a bland update to a bland client with a bland assurance that everything was fine. Everything was not fine. Everything was a cliff with nice landscaping. I stayed late, not because I needed to, but because the quiet after 8 felt honest. The office shed its polite face. The lights dimmed to a city at night glow. The HVAC exhaled like a sleeping animal. I stood by the window and watched the street far below, a ribbon of headlights threading through dark. When I turned back, Andrew's office reflected behind me in the glass. A square of absence. I imagined him in there once, feet up, phone pressed to his ear while he told someone that risk was just courage with a spreadsheet. I used to admire that. Now it sounded like a spell he cast to keep truth away. The elevator dinged. I didn't move. I wanted to see who else stayed late to admire ruins. The doors opened. Maya stepped out. She didn't see me at first. She walked straight to the glass of Andrew's office, palms tucked into the pockets of a coat that made her look like she belonged in a colder, cleaner city. I watched her watch the room. She always took in everything without looking like she was taking in anything. "You should go home," she said, not turning. "You too." She turned. Her eyes were searing in the half-light. "I'm not the one standing in a ghost story." Maybe we both are. She walked over. No preamble. We had never been friends, never been enemies. Something about her lived at a distance, and I respected people who built their own borders. You knew him, she said. We all did. You knew him, she repeated, the words sharper, like a surgeon pressing deeper. The real him. Pieces, I said, enough to stay out of the way. She studied my face. I let her. The trick to hiding is to give people all the expression they expect. Surprises make them look closer. Legal's going to ask you questions, she said. They'll ask me too, and everyone who ever answered to him. They want patterns. Patterns tell stories, I said. Stories are currency, she replied. Spend carefully. She left without saying goodbye. I watched the elevator swallow her and wondered who she was when she wasn't a silhouette moving through offices like a rumor. On my way out, I passed Andrew's door again. My reflection hovered over the word sealed. I raised my hand and didn't touch the tape. Some lines you leave intact, not out of fear, but out of respect for the physics of consequences. Outside, the night carried a clean, electrical chill. I walked without thinking, feet choosing a route they had learned from repetition and regret. The city buzzed. People laughed because they were drunk or young or both. I felt older than I'd felt yesterday. Revenge ages you the way cigarettes do. Quietly, intimately, one breath at a time. At home, my apartment greeted me with the soft hum of the fridge and the slow blink of the router, like the place had been breathing in the dark. I dropped my bag and stood in the kitchen, not hungry, not tired, suspended somewhere between triumph and dread. The laptop on my table waited like a confession booth. I opened it. The folder I had named taxes, because no one opens a folder named taxes, sat where I'd left it. Inside, the architecture of Andrew's ruin coiled like a serpent I had raised. For a moment, I hated it. I hated what it had made me. Then I remembered that it had only revealed me. The difference matters when you're trying to sleep. A new email blinked in the corner. Unknown sender. Subject. You're welcome. My pulse slipped. I clicked without hesitating because some traps you step into just to prove you're still brave. No message body. Just an attachment. 3 screenshots. Internal memos. The first proved a transfer Andrew shouldn't have approved. The second was a board note slicing him from the narrative with surgical language. The third was a calendar entry, a meeting tomorrow, closed door, HR, my name on the list. You're welcome. It read like gloating or warning or both. I closed the laptop and let the quiet push against me. If someone else had been feeding the fire, I needed to know why, not to stop them, to know who was playing on my board without permission. Sleep came reluctantly and left early, like a guest who doesn't like your furniture. I woke before the sun and stared at the ceiling while the city coughed itself awake. The shower steamed the mirror into a foggy oval. I drew a line through it with my fingertip and saw my eyes, staring back. Steady this time. That felt like progress or denial. Either works in a storm. The conference room at 9 felt like the inside of a glacier. HR sat on one side with their pens and safe phrases. Legal sat on the other with their obligation to look bored. A woman named Delaney asked me to state my role. I did. She asked me what I knew. I told her what I could repeat without choking on it. Did you ever suspect misconduct? She asked. I thought of nights spent tracing numbers like fault lines. I thought of emails I had forwarded without leaving fingerprints. I thought of the moment I decided to stop being the person who waits for permission. No, I said. I suspected ego. Delaney's mouth curved like she'd heard that before and hadn't decided whether to be impressed. Did he ever ask you to alter reports? Not in words. In what then? Silence, I said. Deadlines. Praise when truth bent the right way. The weather inside a room can tell you what to wear. She wrote that down. I wondered which part would end up quoted in a file with my name on it. The kind you never get to read. Did you benefit? She asked him. From what? From his downfall. I let the question settle like dust. Everyone here benefits, I said. If rot leaves the building, the air is safer. That's not what I meant. I know. She looked at me for a long time, then closed her folder. We'll be in touch. I left the room feeling like I'd swallowed gravel. In the hallway, Maya leaned against the wall like she'd been waiting for a train that never comes. She pushed off when she saw me. They like you, she said. They like my answers. They like that your answers sound like prayers. Do yours? No, she said. Mine sound like knives. We walked together to the elevator, a quiet truce. When the doors closed, the car mirrored us like a judge. Halfway down, she said, You got an email last night. I turned my head. From who? From whoever wanted you to know you weren't alone. How do you know that? I got one too. She smiled without humor. You're welcome. The elevator dinged. She stepped out and didn't look back. I stood there with the knowledge that the board wasn't mine alone. Relief and anger wrapped themselves around each other inside my ribs until I couldn't tell one from the other. Later that day, the company held a town hall with all the authenticity of a cardboard smile. The interim CEO spoke in rounded phrases about values and culture and the path forward. People nodded like they were praying. I scanned the crowd for faces that knew how to hide. I found 3. One of them was mine. After work, I didn't go home. I walked until my feet ached and my thoughts lined up like suspects. The river cut the city in a cold line. I leaned on the rail and watched the water digest light. In the reflection, the skyline looked like it was trying to climb out of a grave. I took out my phone and typed a message to no one. Then I deleted it. Words mean too much to spend recklessly. Across the river, a billboard glowed with a new ad. Shiny people promising transformation. Something in me buckled. I laughed, out loud, alone. I didn't sound well. I didn't need to be. On the 3rd day, the company found a way to smile again. People adapt quickly to new alters. A memo announced a restructure, teams redrawn, budgets realigned. In the corner of the email, a sentence like a fuse. Temporary promotions will be awarded to stabilize leadership. My name appeared on the list. Director Strategy. I read the line 5 times. The words didn't move. The floor did. Sarah popped her head up over the divider like a prairie dog seeing daylight. Congratulations, thanks, I said, hearing how flat the word sounded. I tried again, adding a note of humble surprise. People like humility, as long as it's not contagious. Didn't expect that. Who did? She said. We're all living in the upside down. I closed the email and opened a blank document. The cursor blinked like a pulse. The promotion was a gift or a leash, maybe both. They were bringing me closer to the fire to see if I burned or confessed to loving heat. The meetings multiplied, the days stretched. People who hadn't used my name in months practiced saying it with new warmth. Like it was a passcode that opened doors, I let them. Every empire remakes its language after a war. One night I found a man waiting near the building entrance. He wasn't security. He wasn't anyone I recognized. He had the stillness of a person who trained their body to hold secrets without shaking. Can I help you? I asked, keys in my hand like a question mark. You already did, he said. Then maybe we're even. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Not how this works. What is this? Consider it a courtesy call. He held up his phone. The lock screen was a photo of 2 people I didn't know. He slid to unlock. The Messages app opened to a thread titled Delaney. My stomach clenched. He scrolled slowly, letting me read. Nothing shocking, not at first. Logistics, times, names, then a sentence that bent the night around it. We can make the numbers lead her way if needed. I lifted my face. Who are you? Someone who doesn't like being cut out of the story he started. You're the email, I said, one of them. What do you want? Balance? I don't do that kind of math anymore. You do, he said it just differently. He pocketed the phone and took a breath that changed the temperature of the air. They'll test you. You're in the room now. Rooms like that want sacrifices. I'm fresh out of goats. You're funny, he said, like a compliment he didn't often give. Good, humor makes a blade look like a spoon. He stepped back. Expect an audit on Friday, smile. Pretend you're surprised. You'll be fine if you remember who burned the first match. Who did? I asked. He considered me. You, he said. You always did. The rest of us just borrowed flame. He walked away like the night belonged to him. I stood there until the doorman cleared his throat in a way that meant the lobby wasn't a place for thinking too long. Friday came the way all bad weather arrives. Announced, ignored, then suddenly everywhere. The audit team moved through floors with clipboards and durable smiles. They asked for files. They asked for access. They asked if we had time to relive the last 12 months in excruciating detail. We did. We had nothing but time when someone else held the knife. I sat in a glass box with two auditors who smelled like coffee and certainty. They asked me about processes, controls, approvals. I handed them clean documents with fingerprints I had learned how not to leave. At the edge of my vision, Maya watched through the glass with arms crossed. Her face gave nothing away. It never had. At noon, a message pinged my phone. Unknown number again. Just a sentence. The trap you built has more doors than you remember. I typed back before I could think. Then I'll learn the map. No reply came. None needed. By evening, the auditors looked satisfied or tired enough to pretend. I walked them out with a professional smile and a hollow where my appetite should have been. The elevator doors swallowed them. The building exhaled. I felt my lungs mirror it. Maya joined me at the glass. How'd you do? Passed, I said, for now. For now is how adults say hope. What do you say? I say you should come with me. Where? Andrew's place. I blinked. That's a dramatic sentence. His apartment, she said, top floor. View that makes you think money can buy sky. He kept files off-site. He wasn't careless. He was arrogant. Why me? Because I don't want to go alone, she said. And because if there's another shoe to drop, I want you to hear it hit the floor. We stood there measuring trust like doctors measure doses. Finally, I nodded. Okay. The city at night is a confession written in electricity. We drove in silence. The car's heater hummed. The streets thinned to a bone-white quiet. The building we pulled up to was the kind that pretends it's not trying too hard. The doorman recognized Maya. Of course he did. She recognized everyone. We took the elevator to a floor where the air smelled more expensive. Andrew's door opened to a room that looked staged for a magazine, a place where nothing heavy had ever happened, which meant everything heavy had. We moved like thieves, not because we were stealing, but because the truth is easier to find when you walk softly. In the study books, lined the walls in a way that suggested wisdom, not reading. The desk was clean. Too clean. Maya knelt at the base and pressed her fingers to the underside. A small click, a panel slid free. Inside, a thin laptop, a phone without a SIM, a notebook with pages that felt like they were made for secrets. She handed me the notebook. The first page held a list of names. Some I knew, some I didn't. At the top, a word that turned my blood to glass. Succession. I paged through. Dates, transactions. Not illegal, not obviously. But the pattern was there, a rope braided from favors and pressure, and the kind of promises that get whispered in rooms with locked doors. Maya read my face. See it? I see the fire before the match. Good, she said, because there's something else. She powered on the thin laptop. No password. That told me everything about Andrew's sense of invincibility. A folder blinked to life. Drift. Inside were recordings, not many. Enough. She clicked the first. Andrew's voice filled the room, warm, polite, poisoned. He was talking to Delaney. We align incentives, Delaney. You keep the company clean, I keep the board calm. And when the time comes, we make sure the narrative lands where it should. Delaney's voice. And where is that? On a name that can carry the fall and keep the ship afloat. Someone hungry. Someone who owes. My throat closed. Maya paused the file. The room went still. Keep listening, she said softly. The recording resumed weeks later. Andrew again, but worried now. She's sharper than I thought. Delaney, then point her at the right targets. Give her something to rescue. Heroes are easy to direct. He laughed. We'll see. The file ended. The quiet after a voice like that feels like a toxin leaving the room. Maya looked at me. They wanted you. To fall, I said. The words tasted metallic. To rise first, she corrected, so the fall meant something. I stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. He built the gallows and laid flowers at the foot. But you lit the fire, she said. There was no accusation in it, just an observation that cut. I thought I started it, I said. You did, but not the way you thought. We packed the files. We left the apartment cleaner than we found it. On the way down, I watched our faces in the mirrored walls. We looked like allies. We looked like suspects. Sometimes they're the same. Outside, the air knifed my lungs awake. Maya handed me the notebook. Keep it. Why me? Because you're the only one who won't look away. She started toward her car, then stopped. You asked me once what my answers sound like. Knives, I said. Today they sound like this, she replied. Trust is a bridge that only holds if you don't jump. She drove off. I stood there with paper heavy enough to break a window and knowledge sharp enough to carve a path or a wound. The city breathed around me like a beast deciding whether to sleep or feed. At home, I spread the notebook on the table and the laptop beside it. The screenshots I had collected looked like children next to the adults these files were. He hadn't kept everything here. Only what he needed to feel immortal. That's always the part that kills you. I pressed play on the last recording, not Andrew, someone else, a voice I recognized too late, my own. Not a confession, a meeting, months ago. The night he had called me indispensable and told me I had a future. My voice was steady, eager, without sounding naive. The words were clean. The intent could be dressed in any color you liked. I listened to myself promise to deliver, to fix, to carry weight no one else wanted. I listened to myself sound exactly like the kind of person who would be handed a crown made of matchsticks. When the file ended, I didn't move. A long time later, I laughed. It wasn't kind. Ambition had always been my fire. Revenge had been my oxygen. Together, they made a blaze that lit my way and threatened to consume me. Somewhere in the glow, a door waited. Through it was either redemption or a higher floor to fall from. I closed the laptop. I put the notebook away. I made tea I didn't drink. I stood at the window until the city rotated into dawn. When my phone buzzed, I didn't jump. I answered. Good morning, Delaney said. It's late, I replied, watching the sky slip from bruise to bone. For emergencies, time is a rumor, she said. We have a problem. We have many. This one has your name on it. I let the silence stretch until it hummed. Then say it. Internal review flagged anomalies in your old reports. Of course they did. The trap with too many doors, the floor shifting under the precise weight of my choices. Come in early, she said. Bring your laptop. I hung up and listened to the room inhale. I looked at the notebook like it might sprout teeth. I thought about the man in the doorway, the voice on the recordings, the clean square of Andrew's sealed office. I thought about bridges and knives and the exact cost of being the person who doesn't look away. On my way out, I touched the door frame like a superstition. The hallway smelled like other people's mornings. The elevator took its time. Inside, my reflection watched me. I looked like a person about to confess or conquer. Truth is, I was about to do both. The lobby lights were too bright for how I felt. The doorman nodded. I stepped into air that tasted like rain sharpening itself on stone. I walked toward a day that had my name written on it in someone else's handwriting. The city watched. It always does. It takes notes. It keeps score. It remembers who burned and who learned to live in the smoke. Me? I kept moving. I wasn't done. I hadn't even started. The day they called me in early, the sky hadn't decided if it wanted to rain or start over. Gray light pooled between the buildings like smoke trying to escape. I walked fast. Not because I was late, but because the city seemed to be holding its breath, and I didn't want to be the one left standing when it exhaled. When I reached the lobby, my reflection in the glass doors looked older. Not by years, by truths. You can measure time by how many illusions you've buried. I was centuries old by then. Delaney was waiting upstairs. Same folder, same calm, different battlefield. She didn't ask how I was. People like her don't deal in small talk when the walls are closing in. "Sit," she said. I did. She turned the folder so I could see the first page. My reports. The ones I had rewritten. "I'll save us both the dance," she said. "These inconsistencies, they start with you." I didn't answer. "Now," she continued, "either you were careless or you were cleaning up after someone who was, and I'm giving you the chance to tell me which." I looked at the paper, my handwriting turned into evidence. The lines blurred, and for a second I saw fire again. Not literal, memory. The fire I had started in silence. "I fixed numbers that didn't add up," I said, her eyes sharpened. "Whose numbers?" "Andrew's." She leaned back. "Convenient. He's not here to defend himself." "Neither was I when he stole my work." She didn't flinch, but something behind her gaze shifted. A flicker of understanding or pity. Or both. "I'm not your enemy," she said finally. "Then what are you?" "A reminder," she said, "that if you stare too long at a man's ashes, you forget to breathe your own air." I almost laughed. "You think this is about him?" "I think this was never just about him," she said quietly, "and that's what makes you dangerous." She closed the folder, tapped the edge against the desk, and said, "You're on suspension. 2 weeks, with pay. HR will send details." I wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. I just nodded, stood up, and walked out. The world outside was louder now. Horns, footsteps, voices. Like the city had decided to move on without me. For the first time in months, I didn't have anywhere to be. The first few days of suspension felt like detox. I woke up at dawn out of habit, made coffee I didn't need, stared at my phone waiting for messages that didn't come. The silence wasn't peace, it was withdrawal. The brain doesn't know what to do when it stops fighting. By day 3, I cleaned the apartment like I was erasing fingerprints. By day 5, I sat on the floor with an old notebook, the kind I used before ambition started writing over my handwriting. Inside were fragments, quotes, plans, pieces of a person I'd forgotten I used to be. "Build, don't burn," one line read. I stared at it until my eyes stung. That was the version of me, who believed success could be shared, who thought kindness wasn't weakness, the one who stayed late not for approval, but because creation made her feel infinite. She was gone now, or hiding. That night the rain came, not the dramatic kind. Just a steady, apologetic drizzle that softened the city's edges. I walked without an umbrella, letting it soak through my jacket until I couldn't tell where the rain ended, and I began. I stopped at a diner that looked older than the street it lived on. Neon flickered in the window, open spelled half in light, half in memory. The waitress brought coffee that tasted like courage diluted by water. I drank it anyway. Across the booth, a man in a suit was talking too loud on his phone. Every sentence was a deal. Every pause was a threat. I could see Andrew in the outline of him, the hunger, the certainty. It didn't make me angry. It made me tired. When he hung up, he caught me looking. "Rough day?" he asked. "Long life," I said. He chuckled. "Aren't they all?" I smiled back, a human gesture. Then I left. Outside, the air smelled cleaner, not new, just honest. I walked until the streets turned to quiet neighborhoods and the lights got warmer, smaller. A kid was drawing with chalk on the sidewalk, colors melting in the rain. His mother called him in, but he kept finishing the last line of a sun he'd drawn. He didn't rush. He didn't care that the rain would wash it away. He just wanted to complete it. I stood there too long watching. Something in my chest cracked open. Not pain, not relief, just recognition. That's what I'd lost. The need to build something beautiful, even if it didn't last. The next morning I wrote. Not reports, not strategy decks, just words. I didn't plan to. I just sat down and they arrived, like they'd been waiting for permission. I wrote about fire, about hunger, about the quiet violence of ambition, about losing yourself in the reflection of people who never truly saw you. I wrote until the sky turned gold and my hands hurt. It wasn't a confession. It was a resurrection. Days blurred after that, but not the way they used to. I walked more, slept better, ate real meals instead of caffeine and deadlines. My mind felt like it was learning how to be human again. By the second week, I stopped checking my email. That was when the call came. It wasn't from Delaney. It was from Maya. "You alive?" she asked. "Oh, more than before," I said. "That's new," she said with a smile in her voice. "Listen, there's something you should see." "What is it?" "Not over the phone. Meet me." "Where?" "Somewhere honest." That's how I ended up in a public park at dusk, surrounded by laughter and barking dogs and a sky that looked like it was apologizing for winter. Maya sat on a bench, hands wrapped around a paper cup. She looked different, softer, lighter. "You ever think about stopping?" she asked when I sat down. "Stopping what?" "Trying to win wars that don't need fighting." "Sometimes," I said. "Then I remember I don't know how." She nodded. "I didn't either, until I had to." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo. Me, standing in front of the building the day Andrew was suspended. I looked like I just watched a kingdom burn. "Where did you get this?" "It came to me anonymously," she said. "No note, just the picture. You weren't the only one who had a ghost." I looked closer. In the reflection of the glass door behind me, a figure stood just out of frame. The man from before, the one who said I burned the first match. "He's still watching," I said. Maya nodded. "Probably, but the question is, why?" I folded the photo and slipped it into my pocket. "Maybe he's making sure I finish what I started. Or maybe," she said, "he's waiting to see if you learn." We sat there quietly as the sun dropped behind the skyline. For the first time, silence didn't feel like strategy. It felt like peace trying to find its way back. She stood, dusted off her coat. "Whatever you do next," she said, "make sure it's yours." Then she left. That night, I reopened my laptop, not the company one, my own. I created a new document and titled it Ashes of Ambition. I wrote the first line, "Every fire starts as a wish." I didn't write it for them, not for Andrew, not for revenge. I wrote it for the version of me who had been buried under ambition, waiting for permission to breathe again. The words came slow but steady. They weren't about vengeance anymore. They were about rebuilding, not as the woman who won the war, but as the one who survived it. When I finally stopped, it was 2 a.m. The city outside was quiet. For once, I didn't feel small inside it. I saved the document, closed the laptop, and whispered to the dark, "I'm done burning." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The first sign of peace was silence, not the kind that echoes after destruction, but the kind that hums quietly inside you when you've stopped fighting yourself. Weeks passed. The suspension ended. HR sent an email that felt more like a footnote than forgiveness. I didn't go back. I sent my resignation instead, 2 lines, no punctuation, just clarity. For the first time in years, I woke up without a deadline pressing against my ribs. The mornings were awkward at first, like learning how to breathe through new lungs. I made breakfast. I walked. I sat in parks watching strangers live their ordinary lives and realized ordinary is a privilege. My therapist, the first I'd ever dared to see, said, "Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about deciding what deserves to live in your head rent-free." I laughed. "Mine's a crowded place," she smiled, "and then start evicting." So I did. Slowly, one by one. I stopped checking the company's LinkedIn updates. I deleted emails I'd been saving as proof. I even let myself forgive Andrew, not because he deserved it, but because carrying him around was too heavy. At night, I wrote, "My story, my truth. A woman who burned for power until she became the fire." I didn't know who would read it, maybe no one. That didn't matter. Writing was breathing again, and every word was oxygen. By spring, the manuscript was half done. I called it The Ash Habit. It wasn't about revenge. It was about the addiction to ambition. So it's the way it seduces you into thinking you're building when you're actually eroding. People started noticing the change in me. My voice softened. My shoulders dropped. Even my reflection seemed to look back with something like understanding. Peace wasn't loud. It was subtle, almost shy, but peace, I learned, never arrives alone. It brings ghosts to see if you mean it. It started with a message. No name, no number, just a single line. They're rewriting the story without you. I stared at it for a long time. I should have ignored it. I almost did. But curiosity is the last addiction to die. 2 days later, I saw the article. Scandal survivor leads company turnaround. The byline, Delaney. The subject, Maya. In the photo, she stood at the head of a boardroom, confident, sharp, glowing. The article painted her as the whistleblower, the moral compass who exposed Andrew and restored integrity. My name appeared once, a footnote. A former analyst whose reports contained discrepancies. That's all, discrepancies. No mention of the months I'd spent holding that place together. No word of the trap I'd set, or the quiet war that cost me my peace. I read it twice, then again, until the words blurred into static. Part of me was furious. The rest was numb. I closed the laptop and went for a walk. The streets looked different now. Too bright, too loud, like someone had turned the saturation up on reality. I stopped by the river, the same spot where I'd once laughed in the dark. This time, I didn't laugh. "You asked for peace," I told myself. "This is the price." The wind didn't answer, but the water did. Shifting, restless, reminding me that peace without truth is just another disguise. The next morning, Maya called. "I figured you'd see it," she said. "Hard not to," I said. "You look good under headlines." "It wasn't my choice," she said. "Delaney wrote it." "Did she also write me out of it?" Silence. Then, "She said it was cleaner that way." Cleaner. Like truth was dirt. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hang up. Instead, I said, "Meet me." "Where?" "Somewhere honest." We laughed a little at that, or them remembering the last time. We met at the same park. Different season, same bench. Maya looked older in daylight, not tired, just weighed down by the gravity of being. Someone's hero on paper. "They want to make it a book," she said. "A memoir, the redemption of the company." I looked at her. "Yours?" "Ours," she said quietly, "but only if I agree to their version." "And what's their version?" "That Andrew was a villain, that I was the savior, that you were collateral." I let the word hang. Collateral. Not even a person. Just the space damage passes through. "You going to let them?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "It's a good offer. Money, exposure, a fresh start." "Fresh starts built on old lies rot fast," I said. She sighed. "You sound like the moral of a story no one wants to hear." I stood. "Then write your version. But don't expect me to disappear from it." "I never did," she said softly. "But maybe they did." That night I didn't write. I couldn't. The words felt heavy again. My hands shook above the keyboard like they were holding ghosts. I thought I'd left the fire behind. Turns out I just built a prettier room around it. By midnight, I reopened the folder labeled taxes. It had been months since I'd touched it. Inside were the original files, screenshots, proof. The skeleton of my revenge. The urge was instant, the temptation loud. I could leak everything. Blow the story open again, expose them all. I could, but should I? I stared at the files until dawn. Somewhere between fatigue and fury, I realized something. Revenge wasn't my story anymore. Truth was. And sometimes the truth doesn't scream. It speaks quietly, waits to be heard by those ready to listen. So instead of leaking, I wrote again. This time not fiction, not confession. A letter to Delaney. You once said I stared too long at ashes. Maybe you were right. But ashes tell stories too. Of what was real, what burned, what refused to die. You rewrote a story to make it clean. I lived it to make it true, and the truth doesn't fit in your reports. You built your redemption on silence. I'm done being quiet. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about record keeping, about history written by survivors, not spin doctors. You can publish your version, but I'll publish mine. Let's see which one people believe. I sent it. No CC, no blind copies, just a clean shot into the dark. Then I hit upload on my own story, the first 3 chapters of The Ash Habit, posted anonymously, free, no ads. By morning, it had 1,000 reads. By noon, 10,000. People didn't know who I was, but they knew the feeling, the betrayal, the burnout, the quiet rebirth. The comments weren't praise, they were confessions. People writing about their own ashes, their own ambition. For the first time, I wasn't burning alone. Weeks passed. Delaney never replied. Maya didn't call again. I moved to a smaller apartment near the edge of the city. Less skyline, more sky. I taught workshops on creative recovery. Wrote for people who'd forgotten their own voices. One evening, a message came through my site. No name. Just, you did it right this time. Attached was a single photo. The man from before standing by the river, his face turned away, smoke curling from a match he'd just let die. No threat. No warning. Just acknowledgement. And somehow, that was enough. I closed my laptop, stepped outside, and watched the city lights blink like constellations pretending to be stars. I had burned, yes, but I had also rebuilt. Ambition hadn't destroyed me. It had simply forced me to decide who I really was without it. And now I knew. The city looked different in the fall. Slower, older, like it was finally catching its breath after everything it had witnessed. I used to think cities never slept, but they do. They just dream out loud. It had been 6 months since I walked away from everything that used to define me. The company, the revenge, the fire. I still woke up early, though. Old habits die quieter than you expect. Most mornings I'd walk to the cafe on 7th, the one that smelled like burnt toast and forgiveness. I'd bring my notebook, order the same black coffee, and write without agenda. Words about nothing. Words about everything. Some days it was poetry, some days it was apology, some days it was just silence turned into ink. The world didn't end when I stopped chasing it. That was the biggest surprise. It kept spinning, and for the first time I learned how to stand still without feeling like I was falling behind. People started recognizing my work online. The Ash Habit had found its way into quiet corners of the internet, and burnout survivors, dreamers, people clawing their way back from ambition's sharp edges. They called it healing. I called it survival. Then came the email. No subject line, no signature. Just a few words that turned the air in the room colder. You forgot to tell the whole story. Attached, a photo of me again. This time sitting in the cafe writing. The message came from a dead address. The same style as before? Him. The man who'd once said, "You always lit the first match." For months I'd told myself he was gone. A shadow burned out. But shadows don't disappear when the sun rises. They wait for another angle. I closed the laptop and stared at the window. My reflection looked calm, but my heartbeat disagreed. The phone rang. Private number. I answered. A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in months. Deeper now, roughened by guilt or distance. Long time, he said. Not long enough. He laughed softly. Still sharp, good. I was starting to worry that peace made you dull. What do you want? Closure, he said. You took your piece of the story. I never got mine. You had enough power when it mattered. This isn't about power anymore. I waited. The silence stretched, then broke. They're investigating. Again, he said. The files you published woke something up. They want to know where the rest of it came from. They're looking for me. Good, he sighed. Don't be naive. If I go down, you go with me. We built the fire together, remember? I'm done playing your games. You say that, he said, but you still pick up when I call. The line clicked dead before I could answer. I sat there for a long time, the hum of the cafe fading under the pulse in my ears. The piece I'd built suddenly felt like glass, transparent, fragile, waiting for impact. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every noise sounded like a consequence. Every shadow looked like a memory trying to sneak back in. By 3 a.m., I gave up. I turned on my desk lamp and opened the old notebook, the one with Andrew's handwriting in the margins. I hadn't looked at it since the day I wrote my resignation. There it was. The list of names, the proof, the patterns. But this time, I didn't see revenge. I saw people, human beings trapped in the same hunger I once mistook for purpose. It wasn't corruption that ruined us. It was emptiness, the kind that makes you keep running even when there's nowhere left to go. I wrote one last line at the bottom of the page. Ambition never dies. It just changes its disguise. Then I tore the page out and fed it to the flame of a candle. Watched it curl, blacken, disappear. The next day I went to see Maya. She'd moved into a small office downtown, nothing like the glass towers we used to worship. She looked surprised when she saw me. You look, she began, then stopped. Different. Peaceful? I offered. Dangerously so. We laughed. The kind of laugh that only happens between survivors who don't need to pretend anymore. She poured 2 cups of coffee and leaned against the desk. I heard they're reopening the case, she said. Yeah, I got a call. From him? I nodded. You going to help them find him? She asked. I don't know, I said. Part of me wants to finish it. The other part wants to stop living like everything needs an ending. Maya smiled faintly. You sound like a writer now. I sound tired, I said. She raised her cup. To being tired for the right reasons. We drank. After a while, she reached into her drawer and pulled out an envelope. You should have this. Inside was an old photo. The 3 of us, Andrew, me, and her, taken at some corporate retreat years ago, back when everything was possibility, back when betrayal was just a rumor we didn't believe in. I looked at my younger self. Bright-eyed, confident, hungry. She had no idea what was coming, I whispered. Maybe that's a blessing, Maya said. If we knew how much pain growth required, none of us would start. I slipped the photo into my pocket. What are you going to do if they come for you? She shrugged. Tell the truth. The version I can live with. When I left her office, the air outside carried the weight of coming rain. I walked without direction until I found myself at the river again, the same place every version of me had returned to. That's where he was waiting, the man, the shadow, the architect of the first fire. He stood by the railing, smoking, the ember of his cigarette blinking like Morse code. I was wondering when you'd show up, I said. He smiled, eyes tired. You always were the predictable one. You sent the photo, he nodded, and the message. Thought you deserved the truth. About what? About me, he said. About what happens when you try to rewrite a system that only knows how to consume? You're not making sense. He flicked the cigarette into the river, watched it vanish. Delaney's not done. Neither is the company. They're laundering the story again, this time under a new name. Your book woke people up, so they'll drown it in better PR. So what? I said. We burn it all again? He turned to me. You could, or you could let it burn itself. And you? I'm leaving, he said. For good this time. No phones, no messages, just distance. I didn't know whether to believe him. He looked past me at the city lights. You were the only one who understood what ambition costs. Don't forget it. Then he walked away, slow, steady, fading into the blur of night like a sentence without punctuation. I didn't stop him. Some people aren't meant to be followed. It rained again that night, hard this time, like the sky had been holding back too long. I stood on my balcony, letting it soak me, eyes closed, breathing. I thought about everything, the lies, the fire, the long climb back from emptiness, and for the first time I didn't want revenge or validation or even closure. I just wanted rest. When I went inside, my phone buzzed. A message from Maya. The article's down. They pulled it. Delaney's out. No fireworks, no applause, just a quiet ending that felt strangely fair. I smiled, small, real. Then I turned off the lights, sat by the window, and wrote one final entry. Peace doesn't mean the fire's gone. It means you've learned not to feed it. I closed the notebook. Outside, the city kept breathing, imperfect, alive, endless. And me? I finally let go. There's a particular kind of quiet that only comes after survival. It doesn't sound like peace. It sounds like space. The echo of everything you've already said and no longer need to. That's what my life became. Space. I left the city, packed my notebooks, my laptop, and the small collection of things that didn't lie about who I was. I moved to a coastal town 2 hours north, not far enough to forget. Just far enough to see the skyline as a memory instead of a mirror. The air tasted like salt and second chances. The mornings were slower here. The sea spoke in waves instead of alarms. I'd sit on the porch with coffee that actually tasted like coffee, not strategy, and watch fishermen start their day. No deadlines, no boardrooms, no ghosts. For a while, I thought that was the end. But peace, I've learned, isn't an ending. It's maintenance. You wake up and choose it again and again. I started teaching writing classes at the community center, nothing fancy, just stories. Finding your voice after the fire. That's what they called it. The first day, 10 people showed up. By the third week, there were 4. I didn't mind. The ones who stayed were the ones who needed to. They came from everywhere. A nurse who'd burned out during the pandemic, a laid-off architect, a single father who wanted to tell his daughter's stories before bedtime. We talked about language like it was medicine, how words could rebuild what ambition once hollowed out. But then, one afternoon, a new student walked in late. Her name was Lena. 22 maybe, sharp eyes, nervous hands. I recognized that tremor, the weight of wanting too much too soon. She sat in the back, quiet at first, scribbling furiously as I talked about narrative truth. How every story we tell is really about the parts of ourselves we're ready to meet. After class, she stayed behind. Your stories, she said. I've read them online, The Ash Habit. You wrote that, right? I hesitated. I'd never confirmed it publicly, but her voice carried no judgment, only hope. I did, I said. She smiled like someone finding proof that healing was real. It helped me, she said softly. I was at this agency, marketing, all performance reviews and fake smiles. They said burnout was weakness, that if I couldn't keep up, I didn't belong. I nodded. I know that language. I quit, she said, last month. Everyone said I'd regret it. Do you? Every morning, she said. Then after a pause, but every night I sleep. We both laughed. It wasn't loud, but it was real. She looked down at her notebook. Can I ask you something? Anything. Was it worth it? The revenge, the fight, everything? I looked out the window, at the ocean moving endlessly between destruction and renewal. I thought it was, I said, for a long time. Revenge felt like clarity, but clarity without peace is just another illusion. So no, I smiled. It was worth surviving. The rest just taught me the difference. She nodded like she was storing the sentence somewhere safe. Do you ever miss it? The rush? Sometimes, I said, but now I recognize it for what it is, hunger without nourishment, ambition's echo. We stood there in the doorway, the afternoon light cutting the room in half. For a moment I saw myself years ago, tired, hopeful, desperate to be seen. You're going to be fine, I told her. Just promise me one thing. What? When you build your next fire, make sure it's for warmth, not war. Over the next few months, Lena became a regular. She wrote stories about ambition, loss, her mother's courage, her own fear. The kind of writing that doesn't ask to be liked, only to be understood. She'd stay late after class asking questions that reminded me of every version of myself I'd ever abandoned. One night she said, "You write like you're still healing." "I am," I said. "We all are. Healing's not a finish line, it's a rhythm." She smiled. "You should put that in a book." "Maybe I will," I said. "Maybe you will first." She laughed, and for the first time in years, I felt something like pride. Not the kind built from winning, but the kind born from watching someone else start to believe. Winter came slowly that year. The town dimmed to softer colors. I'd walk the shoreline at dusk, notebook tucked under my arm, watching waves erase footprints faster than they formed. Sometimes I'd see Lena sitting on the rocks, headphones in, writing furiously. She'd look up, wave, and go back to it. One evening as the sun melted into the horizon, I asked her what she was working on. "My first book," she said. "It's called Saltwater Lessons about how the sea takes and gives, just like people." "Sounds like something I'd read," she grinned. "You're in it," I laughed. "Should I be flattered or worried?" "Both," she said. That night, back home, I wrote her a letter. I didn't send it. Maybe I will someday. It said, "Dear Lena, if you ever forget why you started, remember this. The world will always ask you to trade authenticity for approval. Don't. The applause fades faster than the truth lasts. You'll fail. You'll burn. But if you're lucky, you'll rise softer, not smaller. And one day, you'll meet someone who looks at you the way I looked at you. And you'll realize survival isn't the end of the story. It's the sequel." Months later, The Ash Habit found its way to print. I didn't pitch it. A small press reached out after the online chapters went viral again. They called it raw, unforgiving, haunting. I called it honest. I dedicated it to the ones who stopped pretending. The book tour was small. Independent bookstores, community halls, coffee shops with leaky ceilings. Lena came to the last one. During the Q&A, someone asked, "Do you still believe ambition is dangerous?" I thought about that for a moment. "No," I said. "Ambition isn't dangerous. It's lonely. It asks for everything and gives nothing until you teach it boundaries. The danger is thinking it'll fill what only purpose can." The room was quiet after that. Not applause, listening. The kind of silence that holds weight. Afterward, Lena hugged me. She was crying, or maybe I was. She whispered, "You changed everything." "No," I said, "you did. I just told the story first." That night, after the signing, I walked along the empty street. The bookstore's neon faded behind me, replaced by the hush of waves nearby. A car drove past Iritquay night, headlights slicing through fog. For a moment, I thought I saw Andrew in the passenger seat. Not literally him, just a ghost of imagination. The kind that follows you until you forgive it. I smiled. "Rest easy," I whispered to the air. We both finally learned. The wind carried it away, as if it agreed. I still dream about the fire sometimes, the boardroom, the betrayal, the night the world fell apart. But in the dream, I'm never afraid. I'm just watching, detached, curious. When I wake, I write down what I remember, not because I miss it, but because even pain deserves a place in the archive. The city still sends me emails sometimes, old colleagues asking for quotes, journalists digging into the past. I don't reply. The past already said enough. Now my days are simple. Teaching, writing, walking the coast. And every week, a new letter arrives from a stranger who found my story online. They all start the same way. I thought I was the only one. I write back every time. You never were. Lena's book came out a year later. Saltwater Lessons. The dedication read, "For the woman who taught me to build fires, I could survive." I cried when I read that. The kind of tears that don't sting, just release. I placed it on my shelf next to the ash habit. 2 stories side by side, fire and water, ending and renewal. That night I sat on the porch, watching the horizon fade to blue. Somewhere out there, waves erased another set of footprints, and somewhere else, someone took their first, and I thought, maybe that's all legacy is. Not being remembered, but passed forward. The lesson, the scar, the strength, the fire that doesn't destroy but warms.